Still going strongly in the closing minutes. Great run by Kevin McAllister! What a goal that is! Delivery's good, there's Hagan. Now McGrillen, he scored!
It's Stokes on a hat-trick! Goal number 3 for Anthony Stokes!
Ralston saw off Robertson and delivered! Sybil scores! That's the goal! That's the moment! Samuel off and running again. Is it going to be the hat-trick? You know it is.
This is Falkirk Daft.
Welcome to a very special edition of Falkirk Daft as Falkirk Daft meets the CEO of the club, and that man is Mr. Jamie Swinney. Welcome to the show, Jamie.
Thanks for inviting me on, gents. Thank you.
No problem.
Brilliant to have you on, mate. It's just we spoke to Kenny and Keith earlier in the season. We spoke to the management team. I think it's really important because you have such an important job at the club that to get, like you say, Jamie, we talked before we started recording about transparency, and I think you're the man in the know to do that sort of thing. I just wanted to just find out a bit of background, just in case people don't know you, Jamie. What's been your journey to end up in the place you are now at Falkirk?
Yeah, certainly a good question. I grew up in Grangemouth, so I've always been in the Falkirk area. But in terms of education, I went to Grangemouth High, followed by Stirling University, where I done sports management. And at the time of being at university, I wanted to start to get some experience in sport. From a work experience perspective, I've always obviously followed football and always wanted to play as a kid, and then always watched the game. However, I felt I need to get some experience. I started coaching when I was about 17. I started doing volunteer coaching the same way as most coaches start off. You just offer your time, and I actually really enjoyed it. So I went to university at 18. I was doing sports management, and I was doing a lot of coaching on the side. And through time, I had a real passion for coaching. I really actually stopped playing and focused on coaching. Not that I was ever going to play professionally, but just I stopped playing even at kind of amateur level, because I actually had a real love for coaching. So I did actually coach for 16 years in total. And that was all the way through different jobs. From in terms of job perspective, when I left university, I worked at Glasgow Culture and Sport and Sports Development for a period of time. I then went to Stennismuir where I led the community football programme. From there, I was at Larbert High as part of a head of sport role, very much an overall sporting role at Larbert High, looking at community sport development. Then the Forth Valley Football Academy was founded, which was Stennismuir and Falkirk and East Stirlingshire with Stirling University and the Scottish FA. So I went there to look after the operations and carry on the coaching as well with the children's and youth sides. And then when unfortunately the academy closed, I found myself looking for employment, and Stennismuir gave me the chance to go back to the club at this time as the chief executive. And then in about July 21, I got July 21, I got the call from someone at Falkirk to ask me would I be interested in discussing this role, and it was something I was really keen to do. So after some discussions, I accepted the opportunity to come to Falkirk. So that's a whistle-stop tour of my career to date.
That's it. Now, for people that maybe don't know, what does a CEO of a football club do, Jamie? What's your main priority at the football club?
So I think in Scottish football, most clubs are relatively small clubs in Scottish football, and Falkirk are no different. So we obviously don't carry a huge staff. I'm sure if you're at a Manchester United or a Man City or a Liverpool, you have hundreds and hundreds of staff. At a club like Stennismuir or Falkirk, even though we are, I think, a relatively big club in Scotland, you have to just be very hands-on in every single part of the club. So every single part of the club you have to be involved in and hopefully making a positive contribution to. So whether that's the commercial side through sponsorship and advertising and events, whether it's the supporter services side and hospitality, ticketing, retail, obviously finance, you have to be pretty good with the numbers. I think that's a really important part of the role. You've got the operations side and the overall facility management and the safety aspects of the club. So you have to be hands-on and have a pretty significant involvement in that. And then I suppose the bit that probably changes depending on the club is how much you're involved or not involved in football. So there's certainly a bit of involvement in football in my role, and but maybe other clubs it's more significant or less significant. I'm not entirely sure, but that's probably the one part that maybe differs from club to club. So really, in a nutshell, you have to be heavily involved in every single part of the club, and hopefully, I've got a reasonably broad experience in different parts of football, so hopefully being able to add value to all those different aspects over the last year and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen a lot of tweets from you, Jamie. You talk about your grandpa, and he was obviously a big Falkirk man. Did you go to Brockville back in the day? I mean, do you remember going to your first Falkirk game?
Yeah, I was at Brockville. I don't know how many times I probably was at Brockville 200 times or something. As a kind of rough number, I used to go to all the home games with my granddad, and then as I got a wee bit older, I started to get to go to some away games. But I remember when I first went, I think my first game was the 5-4 game where Celtic won 5-4 at Brockville. I think that was my first game. It's the first one I remember, John. There is a chance I went to some rubbish games before that, and I've just completely eradicated them from my memory. But that's the game I remember. So, and as I got older and started to get, probably about 8 or 9, I started to really get interested properly in football. I think when you first get taken along and you're 5 or 6 year old, it's maybe difficult to concentrate for 90 minutes or even show a real interest in the game until you maybe get a wee bit older. Once I got to it probably was around about the 1997 Cup final, actually, that I think I really started to think I really like football. And going to Ibrox as a 10-year-old kid, I remember being so excited with this incredible opportunity to go and watch our Scottish Cup final. So I think that's when I really started to think I actually really like football. And then I started to say to my granddad, you go to the next away game, and I started to go in the car to different away games. And I loved that. I loved going around the country to all sorts of strange grounds and different stadiums. So definitely my love for the game, my granddad was a big part of that. And yeah, he was a lifelong Falkirk fan.
Yeah. Who's your favourite player then, Jamie? Who's your favourite player of all time at Falkirk then?
So people might laugh at this, but it's actually Andy Laurie. It's actually Andy
Wow,
Laurie.
we've never had Andy Laurie before. But great shout.
Actually, he was in hospitality the other week doing what, we have a speaker in hospitality, and I actually felt the need to tell him. I said, Andy, you might not have heard this very many times from other people, but I'm going to tell you because it's true. For whatever reason, I just thought he was a top performer for Falkirk week in, week out. He was obviously there for a long, long time. I think it was maybe about 10 years he was actually at the club for. I remember I remember seeing him, obviously, he broke his leg at Brockville, and I just for whatever reason, despite the fact there have been, and I think I said this to him the last time I spoke to him, there have been more talented football players than Andy Laurie to play for Falkirk. I think as a stalwart, I thought he was an absolute stalwart. So actually, it came to the Legends stand. I was quite gutted because he never made it into the nominations, so I wasn't even able to vote for him.
See the thing with Laurie, I thought he was good as well. He was really consistent, bombing up and down that right wing. And was it John Potter that nailed him that day and ruined his career? Really, didn't he? It was all a bit downhill after that, unfortunately, but. Yeah, good shout out. And we've not had Andy Laurie so far.
He was also good for a goal. I always seem to remember he actually for a right back he actually scored a reasonable number of goals. I don't know what the total would have been. It just felt like he popped up every so often with a goal, which was nice from a defender's point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that season he started flying under McCall until the injury. It was unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. We've got a good lot of questions coming in for you, Jamie. Ross, you've got a couple to kick us off with, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. So, Jamie, see, as CEO, obviously we know from the football side, and I'm sure it might come up in some of the questions, it's been a tough season, some highs definitely, and obviously a few lows, more so towards the end of the season. But in terms of you as CEO, what's your personal highs and lows from this season just finished, but more so off the field rather than on it?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll cover football and quite rightly so, and probably a lot of the questions will centre around that. I think from a business point of view, we had last year was a tough year across the whole club. There's no doubt. So it's well publicised that we lost almost £1.2 million last year in terms of our accounts. So that's clearly a horrific year financially, and we had to try and address that. So you had to make huge changes, and one of them is income. We had to make sure that the income significantly improved in every single area. So I suppose what's probably been pleasing is that we've been able to increase all areas of revenue. Well, thanks to the Falkirk supporters, clearly, because it's this club is funded by our fans. Let's face it, we are funded by the fans because of where we are in Scottish football. We don't get a lot of money from the SPFL, so it's our fans that fund the football club. But in every single area, we've seen significant improvement to the point of sponsorship going to be at the highest it's been for over a decade. Same with retail, which I think, given where we were, to have those kind of numbers is quite phenomenal. But all other aspects, whether it be through advertising, events, they've also all been very positive. Falkirk TV, there's been tons and tons of positives. So we've managed to get the club from a period of really, really low income up to a point of basically getting back to pre-pandemic levels, and in some regards even better than they were in the Championship in certain regards, and in other ones that were on course to get back to pretty strong commercial performance. So I think the club needs to maximise all revenues. We need to make sure the club's running to give the management team the best budget possible. We need to make sure our income streams are there. So I think to turn a £1.2 million loss into, hopefully this year, obviously aided by the cup run, a small profit, I think would be a pretty fantastic achievement, and everybody at the club should be proud of that turnaround.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, absolutely. I think that's really, really good. So obviously on that basis, then, are we looking? I know the accountants will probably be doing their stuff very, very shortly, but are we looking at making a profit for this season, Jamie, or do you think that's a bit tougher still?
Probably a small profit. At the moment, our forecast would suggest that we could just about turn a small profit this year, which we obviously started off, and we'll probably come into this a little bit, but we did start off with an operating loss that we knew would be in the region of about £400,000, which we hope to hopefully fill with investment from FSS, from the patrons, and from maybe external investment. So that was a big ask to turn that around, regardless of how the team performed on and off the park. That's a huge sum of money. Clearly, the cup run has helped plug a lot of that gap, but as well as that, we've managed to hit fairly stretching targets commercially, which has allowed us to, certainly this year's AGM and will be a lot easier to show the numbers than last year, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Talk about the FSS there, Jamie. I mean, how is that relationship with the FSS? They've always had the launch of the Forever Falkirk Fund as well. But how are both going in terms of numbers and bringing in the money for the club?
So if I start off with Forever Falkirk, it's quite an easy one to probably wrap up quickly. It's been a pretty slow start. It's not taken off as of yet. I think if you go to the FSS, I think the progress over the last year and a half has been pretty positive. Absolutely, it's not one that we probably expected to absolutely fly. To get to 1,500, 2,000 immediately. Over time, we hope that those kind of numbers could be achieved over time. But the reality is, it's if we're constantly adding and the FSS is constantly increasing, then it's making sure it's allowing the club to be more sustainable longer term. So I think the FSS has done pretty well so far. There's certainly, and I think the FSS themselves believe they could get to about 1,200 is the number the FSS would like to achieve, and we're somewhere just short of 700 at the moment in the FSS. So as a member myself, I think it's the right way forward for the club to be fan owned. But we certainly, for that to be achieved longer term, we would need probably more FSS members, or more people to join the FSS, sorry. But I don't think that takes away from the fact that they've done a pretty good job so far to get up to 670 odd members.
Absolutely.
So Jamie, see just on that then. So you're right, that is really healthy in terms of FSS, and we've obviously tried to support the guys as much as we can this year with events and sponsorship and stuff as well. But so the Falkirk Forever Fund is the market then the people who are not currently, or maybe choose not to join the FSS? Is that the target audience that you're hoping to get into the Forever Falkirk Fund?
Yeah, I suppose wanted to give as many options to supporters as possible. Ultimately, the overall aim is to try and reduce this operating loss that the club's had for 15 years. So how do you do it? You need to find different ways of bringing in income. So Forever Falkirk's another option. Now, who would be attracted to that? I suppose it's individual choice. Some people may not believe in fan ownership. Now, while I think it's a good idea, and the board certainly believe it to be a good idea, and everybody that's joined the FSS probably believe in fan ownership, But clearly there's a lot of Falkirk fans out there who haven't joined the FSS. So is one of the reasons that they actually don't necessarily believe in fan ownership, but they still want to put money into the manager's budget. That's a potential. Or other people that just would be happy to do both. Be happy to do FSS and Forever Falkirk. What we certainly don't want to do is turn people away from FSS. We absolutely don't want that. We want people to support the FSS. It's just another option, Ross. But so far, it's not been overly well supported so far.
See, just as a link, because I know John's going to come into a question, but just as a link to that, there's something I was thinking about, Jamie, and you've probably already thought it with the rest of the guys, but you've got the 1876 club, which is still ongoing. Was there any consideration thought to sort of merge that with the Forever Falkirk or make it as one so that the people who are able to contribute are potentially then, like I'm thinking of the FSS have obviously got monthly stuff going on and they can vote for people on the board. Was there any thought process of amalgamating that to sort of give it a little bit of an incentive to new joiners as well?
First of all, I think on the 1876 club, we do need to review that and see is there a way to actually relaunch it and to maybe make it something bigger than it is. The one challenge we've got with any of these is the FSS at the moment, the Forever Falkirk at the moment is a complete donation scheme. So there's nothing tangible comes back the way, and therefore it can be classed as a donation with 100% of the money going into the manager's budget. The minute there is any form of rewards, then obviously we will pay the VAT on that. So that's why we did initially look at 3 tiers. We looked at having a bronze, silver, and gold tier and having different levels of what you get in return. But the minute you do that, you then pay the VAT on it. So we decided if we tried a donation only scheme that went 100% into the manager's budget, that might have been attractive to supporters. So that's why we did it. But I think you're right on the 1876 club, Ross. It's something we need to do a review of and maybe look at ways of improving it.
Just before we get into the listener questions, Jamie, it's something that I've always been perplexed with Falkirk about. Maybe you're the best person to ask this question for. On our doorstep, we have a huge company in Ineos. And I've never understood why they're about to buy Man United, possibly. I've never understood why we don't have a closer relationship and can get as much money, because there's a lot of our support that work at the plant and have always been we've got this massive business just pumping out oil and pumping out money on our doorstep. Why there's never been a relationship with Ineos? And is that something you've approached, or I'm sure many have tried before, but I'm intrigued to see if there is a relationship there.
It's a great question, John, and it's one that I find extremely frustrating. I really share your frustrations in that. We have a massive company on our doorstep, and Jim Ratcliffe, who the owner, I mean, he's shown an interest in obviously sport at a very high level. It must be said, he sponsors the All Blacks, he sponsors the Sky sailing team, he sponsors, I think it's Nice Football Club. Obviously, there's been interest in buying teams in England, but he certainly, from his own perspective, he does seem to go in at a very high level of sport, and maybe we're not. Maybe wouldn't be seen as attractive. I would love to get the opportunity to meet him. And I would certainly do my absolute utmost to talk about how even putting a relatively small amount of money for his wealth into Falkirk Football Club could be fantastic for the local town and community. Unfortunately, I've never had the opportunity to meet him. We did have a relationship with Ineos. If you remember, they used to sponsor the under-12s Go Free previously. Yeah. That was something they about a year and a bit ago when I met with an individual who was involved in that. What he explained to me was that I think there's something like 22, effectively, departments is the wrong term, but businesses within Ineos. So there's 22 separate, if you want to call them cost codes or management centres, where they all have their own budget, but they're all relatively small in terms of sponsorship and advertising. So while at the very top level of the company, the individual that has ability to go and spend millions, what was explained to me from a kind of senior manager down based down in Grangemouth was that what they don't have on the Grangemouth site is a large budget for sponsorship and advertising, and it's split across the site, if that makes sense. That was how it was explained. We have, I know the club has tried on various occasions to find a route into either Jim Ratcliffe or maybe somebody of senior position, but we haven't managed it, unfortunately.
Well, if anyone kens Jim, give us a shout on Falkirk Daft. We'll make that connection happen for you, Jamie. We'll give him a bell.
Can we try and get some sponsorship for the podcast first as well, though?
Aye, sponsor that, and then we can maybe he buys Man United, he become a feeder club for Man United. You get all their best players up at Falkirk. Listen, job's a good one.
I think we might need to aim higher than Man U presently. They're not doing that great, are they?
That's true. That's true.
I was just going to say, Jamie, you were obviously talking there about like sponsorships and stuff, and we are at that time of year when everybody's talking about season tickets and new strips and all that kind of stuff.
Have you seen the new strip, Jamie? Is what we're wanting to know.
Well, no, I don't think we're going to get. I don't know if we're going to get an exclusive there. But what is the current situation with like season ticket sales, shirts, and sponsorships and things like that, Jamie?
Yeah, okay. I'll try and give a quick commercial overview. So in terms of season tickets, we're about 600 or so far, which I think is relatively good. Bear in mind that we've put them on sale earlier than normal, I would suggest, and the early birds obviously got the rest of this month to run. So I'm sure we'll hopefully see a good number more over the next month. In terms of where we are with sponsorship, all the full strip is sold, has been sold for a while there. So all the strips sold, and we have got some longer term deals in place, so deals that have ran they're 2 and 3 and 4 year deals that are running on. So sponsorship wise, we're starting at a pretty good place sponsorship wise, and the same would be for advertising as well. So relatively, certainly a much stronger place than we were 2 years ago, a stronger place than we were last year. So we just need to continue to work with our partners to make being a partner at Falkirk really attractive, to hopefully work with partners for a long time. And from our point of view, we need to keep bringing more money in to make the club a bit more self-sufficient.
Absolutely, that's good to hear. Good to hear.
Any timelines on? Because obviously we have had a few questions coming about the strips. Any timelines for those going on sale?
Yeah, hoping mid-June, Ross. So we expect to have the kit from O'Neill's at the start of June. The players don't return until the 17th, so we'll need to see who's available that can come in and help us with some photo shoots and videos. But we really want to get them on sale by about mid-June. That would be our aim.
Just use John, him and Cole Donaldson. Just that could be the strip models for this year.
Hand in hand, beautiful thing. Listen, we've put out on our social media, Jamie, to invite you for questions for you from our listeners. So we kick off with these, and we'll see where we get with them. Ryan says, I was wondering what the consequences of not going up next season will be. Yeah,
I think it's a good question, Ryan. There's no doubt that we need to get up this season. It's quite straightforward. We simply can't continue to operate in League One. The cup run has helped to allow us to keep a reasonable budget and to keep for the club to remain as a full-time club. That for another year, if we weren't to be successful next year, would be a really difficult one. The club would have to make a decision longer term about what's right for the club, and it may well be for the following year that we'd have to consider a hybrid or part-time. I think we just need to be honest about that this year really needs to be our year.
The cup run's obviously helped us this year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's helped to plug the gap, and it's helped to put a little bit of money in the bank. We effectively started last year with just about no money in the bank whatsoever. This has allowed us to have at least a little bit of money in the bank, which therefore allows us to run with an okay budget going into next season. But unless we were to somehow find another big cup run this year coming, which is obviously unlikely, then it would make the following year really difficult.
I mean, we know who we're playing next season, obviously after the weekend there. Cove Rangers just obviously announced they're going full time. It's going to be a challenge, I'm guessing, with they've got a decent experienced squad there. Were you happy that Airdrie went up and Hamilton are coming down, or would you rather? I mean, Airdrie have been a bit of a bogey team for us over the last few seasons. Are you quite happy that it was Hamilton that were coming down rather than having Airdrie left?
I said I'll be honest, John, and the answer is yes. I am. I do think. I mean, I must admit, I think Airdrie over the last 3 seasons have been a good side. I think they have been a good side. They've been a strong playoff side for all 3 years. A wee bit unfortunate, probably not go up last year, because I thought they were a much better team than Queen's Park over the piece last year. Ultimately, the playoffs, the playoffs is what dictates you go up or not. And I think they finished obviously a good number of points above Queen's Park, but in the end, Queen's Park beat them in the playoffs. So Airdrie have been a good side, and clearly our record against them hasn't been anywhere near good enough over the last, I think it's stretching back over several years now. It's not even just the last couple of years. So therefore, I think if firstly Airdrie deserve to go up, and I do believe it's maybe a positive for us.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Hamilton fare when they come in there. You know, we've obviously been here for 4 seasons now, and you know, it does take, you know, I guess to see Queen of the South this year, it's taken them a bit of time to settle, and I think they'll be stronger next season as well. So who do you think will be the biggest threats to Falkirk in the chase for promotion next season, Jamie?
I think Queen of the South's a good one that you've mentioned there, John. They came on to a pretty strong. I think they're the second best team in the last quarter, so I think they actually outperformed. Certainly outperformed themselves. I think they also outperformed Dunfermline in the last quarter as well. So Queen of the South, I think, will be a threat. There's no doubt that Cove going full time. I mean, Cove were a pretty strong part-time side, obviously the last time in this division. I suppose it depends how much money they are going to throw at it. To put it bluntly, I don't know the answer to that one, and I suppose time will tell. And Hamilton, while it is, yeah, absolutely, it's tricky coming down, but again, do they have investment, or do they have young players coming through that might be able to help them? So I think the fact there's going to be 4 full-time teams in the league again next year, it does show it's not going to be straightforward.
Yeah.
Jamie, see, obviously one of the things that's happening just now, there's a lot of talk about it happening just now, is the replacement of the pitch at the stadium. Is there any timelines? We've had a couple of questions that have come in from Gary and others around the timescale. So is that definitely happening this summer? And the second part of the question we've had is it an upgrade on what we've already got?
Yeah, so I'll talk through the process first. So we did receive, or we have received a grant for 50% of the pitch. That allowed us to go to tender, and we worked with Sports Labs as a pitch consultant. They went out to tender and received several bids back in, which gave us different options of carpet. We had various options. However, our consultant were pretty clear that when our pitch was laid, and I think most fans would agree with this, it was the best in the country by a long, long way. It was actually so highly regarded that the manufacturers and the pitch contractors themselves were bringing people here to look at the pitch. So it really, really was. It was held in high regard. And even now, even though it has now got to the end of its lifespan, when we get our pitch test every year, the pitch consultant that does the pitch test, they can't believe how good the pitch still is in terms of its condition, given its relative age. They've been so impressed with how well the pitch is maintained, and even them, in their opinion, the foundations underneath, they would expect there to be a lot of movement, or a bit of movement over the 10 years. They said as far as they can see, until they're at the car park, we won't know for sure. But the foundations under the pitch are as good as could ever be expected after 10 years as well. So the long and short of it is we are going with a very, very similar pitch. It is an MX pitch, which is the one we've got just now. In the last 10 years, what the manufacturer have done the last 10 years is they've made a couple of small upgrades on that carpet, but ultimately it is just a slightly newer generation of the same carpet. Right. So once we looked at all the options, we arrived back at the point of that carpet is still the best that money can buy. It's still classed as a premium pitch, so it's still right at the very top in terms of its quality and the price you pay for it. But after going for the whole pitch tender, it was the best option for us. So we are replacing like for like, albeit as a new generation one. And date wise, it starts the pitch work starts on the 5th of June, and they expect to have it finished by the 30th of June. The only thing that can hold that up is if we get a really, really wet summer or a wet June, that would slow up and delay it a little bit. However, we would be hopeful that by early July, for at the worst case, the pitch will be fully in operation.
Yeah, and obviously we got a government grant for that as well, which is and how the whole community use that pitch anyway. So that's great. Obviously that helps towards it. Question here from Harry. This is taking us in a different direction now, Jamie. He wants to know: is there any idea about creating an organised singing section in the stadium in terms of the atmosphere? I mean, we all know ourselves. It's hit or miss, isn't it? So, I mean, you go to nights like against Ayr or even in the second leg, we tried to raise atmosphere against Airdrie. it's maybe something that gets lost in the stadium is the atmosphere. Would that be a consideration from the club? Because I mean, obviously the Ken McAllister stand, there's a bunch in there already that try and make a hell of a lot of racket. But would there be an idea of maybe arranging or organising a singing section?
I think it's needed, John. I do. I do think that we've got this fantastic asset of such a big fan base, especially for the level we're at. But unfortunately, it doesn't. We're not always able to utilise that asset. And clearly, it comes both ways. That we need to have a team on the pitch that's winning and inspiring the fans to create atmosphere. But we also need the fans to be doing their very best to create atmosphere. And therefore, it does go both ways. Thinking back to Brockville, and it's maybe easy to go back to Brockville, but when I went out the choir at Brockville, you just sang. You just sang. That's what you did. And certainly from memory, even when things weren't going well, I think we were still reasonably good at just singing. Now, clearly, sometimes your memory's selective. There probably was games where it was quiet, but I don't really remember them as well as I remember the ones where it was noisy. We worked with Kieran. Kieran done the flag display. We obviously worked with him to help him that, and it was tremendous. I've spoke to him on a few occasions. I've spoke to different groups who are up in that top section of the Kevin McAllister stand, and I've said to them, we want to help. I don't know exactly what it is as a club that we need to do, but we absolutely want to help. So if anybody's listening out there who have ideas, I think an opportunity might be to sit in during the pre-season with different groups of younger people or people that want to make noise and listen to what the ideas are. I'd be very keen to do that, because I do believe that if we can get the atmosphere better, then we're absolutely utilising our biggest asset, which is our fans. That's our biggest asset. If we can get the stadium noisier, a bit more raucous, then that's an asset that no other club in the division has. And therefore, it would stand us in good stead, I think, of being successful next year. So we definitely need to tackle it, John, and open to ideas as to how we do it.
Yeah. Do you know what you need, Jamie? You need Ross Wayne with a megaphone like you have in Germany. That's what you need at the front of the Ken McAllister stand, barking the orders. That's what you need, Roscoe.
I don't think anyone wants to hear my voice through a megaphone, to be honest, John. But listen, it's hard enough job trying to get the main stand going. Do you know what? Listen, Jamie, you sit in the main stand as well. See if we start a song at the front. You guys at the back need to kind of join in here.
Is it the one man band in the main stand, Mr. Ross Wayne there, Jamie? You've got to come and join him.
No, I must admit, I've seen a few photos of Ross standing up, and he's got the arms going, and everybody else is sitting down round about him. So it's pretty obvious that he's doing his best.
Stone Island goes to his head, Jamie. That's what happens.
Stone Island and a few pints of tenants.
Yeah, exactly. And standard Saturday. So, Jamie, we've had a question come in from Robert. So, and again, this is slightly off topic to the last one. So, as a club, we seem to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of our current reality. What Robert's saying here is he would rather put all resource into the first team, get promoted, and then build the rest of the club. We're not where we were 10 years ago. What's the plan? And I know that's a tough question. What is the plan to guarantee promotion next season?
Right, Jamie, come on, solve that one.
Well, yeah, so guarantee promotion.
Yeah.
I think we need a few £1 million to probably guarantee promotion, to be honest with you. So, so I do understand this, and maybe just to put a few people's minds at ease, because I've read certain things on social media, people saying, are we spending money on floodlights and the pitch when we could actually just be putting it into the manager's budget, or are we spending money on a reserve team when we could just be throwing it into the manager? So I'm assuming that potentially that's where that question's coming from a little bit. And if there's other examples, then please just shout, and I'll try and tackle them. So what we're trying to do with the capital projects, so really the pitch and the floodlights, is first of all, we need to do them because the pitch is going to fail its test probably very soon, and therefore it would be compliant. And the floodlights actually would fail the minimum requirement test that they need at the moment. So first of all, we have to tackle them. Thankfully, the grant we've got is going to cover half the pitch, and it's going to cover the first phase of the floodlights. So the first phase being the main stand. The 2 towers, we'll have to come back and tackle that separately. What we're trying to do is make sure that none of the expenditure for those projects comes out of next year's budget by using loans and grants to effectively fund them fully. So we've managed that up to a point with regards to the pitch. In terms of we've got an opportunity of a loan that will help us get the pitch. That won't affect the manager's budget And for the second phase of the floodlights, which is the 2 towers, we've applied for a Business Energy Scotland interest-free loan, which will allow us to do all the floodlight work, again, at no actual detrimental cost to the manager's budget. Because while we absolutely need to do those projects, we don't want it to affect what is really, really important right now, which is winning this league next year and getting out of the league. So just to put the supporters' mind at ease, we're not spending any of next year's budget on the floodlights or the pitch. The development squad or the reserve team is probably the other one that maybe people might say, well, why don't you just not do that and save whatever that number that is. We held 2 fundraisers this year, and thank you to everybody who came along, our speakers night and our golf day. And overall, they brought in over £40,000 of income, of which about 30 odd grand is profit. And they were designed purely to help the future development of the academy and the reserve team. So at the moment, our under 16s and 18s have been funded the last couple of years. So we've got a part of the budget set aside for the 16s and 18s, but clearly the reserve team is a new expenditure. So the fundraising that we've worked hard for over the last few months is going to pay for the majority of the reserve team. So it's a pretty small number that then is added on from the rest of the budget. So actually that's been funded through fundraising, to be honest with you. And if we don't do that with the reserve team, then our 16s and 18s won't ever progress to the first team. It's the biggest challenge in youth football, having seen it myself over the years. Many good young players coming through our former academy, some making the jump, but most unfortunately not making the jump, is they need a bridge. They need something in between the 18s and the first team to have any chance whatsoever of playing for Falkirk's first team. So as it currently stands, if we don't have a reserve team, pretty much no under 18 is ever going to progress into becoming a Falkirk first team player. So what we need to do is give them an opportunity, and the reserve team will do that in terms of giving them a pathway. And again, it will still be really, really challenging. But if you take, say, a Scott Hinneman who's been out on loan at East Stirlingshire last year, had a good experience in the game, he's got 2 years now to try and try and get himself into our first team. And I think having a reserve team gives him that possibility. And I also think it improves the first team as well, because if you take Paul Watson as probably a great example, if Paul had been ready to come back a little bit earlier than he was, we might have been able to get Paul 3 or 4 games in the reserves, playing 60 minutes, 70 minutes, 80 minutes. Paul might have been potentially ready to be involved at the end of the season in playoffs. Unfortunately, when you've no reserve team, it's very hard to get game time for someone like Paul, or even somebody like Jordan Allen, who maybe can't play in the Scottish Cup, so he's having to sit out matches. He could be getting game time in the reserve. So I do appreciate what the supporter said about putting all the money in the first team, but I can reassure them that the vast majority of what I've just covered there has been covered via other means and not coming out of the manager's budget.
Yeah, well, it's great to see. Obviously, start with that with the 4 young boys signing up the other week there. And I mean, it was a big with the academy, closing, and we cut off what had kept us afloat. I mean, you look at the revenue we brought in for the likes of Bottleby Abbey and Conor McGrandles, and that was a big part of the club's budget. So it's great to see that up and running. And talking about budgets there, Jamie, Drew moves us on saying, how will next season's budget compare to other seasons when we've been in League One? Is John going to have a bigger budget to play with? Is it in comparison to last year? How's it looking?
So at the moment, it's what we're trying to get it to the same level as it was this year. The challenge we've got is what we hoped would happen, and we the board communicated this, is to run a break-even model in League One would mean that we'd have to be part-time. That's just straightforward. We wouldn't be able to generate enough money in League One to give ourselves a full-time budget. Hence why last year we had an operating loss to try and cover. So with the cup money, what we were able to do is take as much of the surplus of the cup money, so some of it's been plugging the gap for this year, and taking the rest of it to put in the manager's budget next year, because it's been brought in by the football players and the football management team. So we're trying to put as much of that into the management team's budget as we can. However, it still doesn't quite get us up to the same level as we were this year. What we really hoped would happen is if we got an increase in FSS and a reasonable uptake in Forever Falkirk, all of that money was then going to do the final top-up. So if we're sitting just a little bit short, if we could get an extra 30, 50, 100k from FSS and Forever Falkirk combined, that was all going to go into the manager's budget to then take them hopefully back up to at least the same level, if not more, because what we really want to do is increase the manager's budget. At this moment in time, though, we're not quite able to do that because we can't put the club back at risk again. We did run an operating loss this year. We can't afford to do that again next year because by doing that we are putting the club at risk. So the budget at the moment would be a little bit below where we'd like it to be, but we are going to hopefully keep working at it to see if we can increase it as the summer goes on. And clearly any increase in season tickets, any increase in Forever Falkirk or FSS allows us to just put whatever that increase is straight into the manager's budget, and even if that means later in the summer, then it would allow us to top it up a little bit. But unfortunately we've not been able to increase it this year.
Jamie, you mentioned there about obviously targets and stuff and meeting expectations. What is the number that the Falkirk fans can work towards for season tickets this summer?
So we expect, or we hope, sorry, I think hope's probably the right term, because the Falkirk fans' loyalty has been absolutely incredible for 4 seasons in this division. What we're hoping is that there's not a dramatic drop-off. So we're hoping for a similar number. We're not expecting an increase. An increase would be fantastic. Last year, if you include half-season tickets and 2 first-season tickets, we got to just about 2,500. So we're aiming for, or our target, would be slightly under that, because we can't afford to just expect that number to be hit again. So if we could get to 2-3, then we'll be okay, because that's kind of roughly what we're looking at as a budget, 2-3. If we're able to increase on that, then as I say, what it allows us to do is simply say to the manager, look, there's some more money for you, and give them more money. So 2-3 would be the aim, Ross, but clearly any more than that would be great.
That actually leads on to the question that John's put forward to us. Are there any plans in place if season tickets fall short after the disappointing end of the season?
So it's a tricky one when you're trying to budget. Obviously, the manager wants to know what is, in March what his budget is for next year. So it's, he wants to know as soon as possible. But at the same time, we can't just assume that season ticket numbers would stay at the same level. So if we do end up, let's say there's a 10% drop off or whatever it may be, then that will just go back into the stretch target, and we will have to find a way of bringing that in elsewhere, whether it's more events, whether it's looking at different commercial options. We simply will have to cover that gap somehow. And at this moment in time, we don't have to, but clearly we do understand that if that was to happen, it's on us to make sure we find other ways of bringing the money in.
Thanks, Jamie. Jamie, I've had a question here from James, and this is kind of going back to probably where it started to kind of go off the rails a bit on the pitch. So we obviously had the high of the Ayr game. It was amazing. What a night it was. And it obviously then led to the Scottish Cup draw being made and Hampden and stuff. So we've got a question here from James. So there were rumours on social media over disagreements with bonus payments to the players following the Scottish Cup win. In your opinion, do you feel this impacted the form that we then saw the rest of the season?
No, as a straightforward answer. The league bonus structure was set. So for every league game, the players knew before they kicked the ball what they would get, and that didn't change at all throughout the whole season. And what you do with cup bonuses is you do discuss them for prior to each round, so to speak. So you don't really set them at the start of the season, because clearly your opponent does have an impact on what you bring in, and therefore you don't set them at the start of the year. But we had good discussions with the players and got a lot of support from them, and we worked, sitting down with them, talking to them, and agreeing a bonus structure that they were happy with, we were happy with. So no, that didn't have any impact at all.
Okay.
Good to hear. Scott has got a question here for Jamie. He says, is there someone on the board or behind the scenes insisting they have a say in football matters? No, is a straightforward answer. We don't really have a football person on the board, I think is I think it'd be fair to say. Clearly when the club, I'm going back a number of years, and I got to know him very well through the academy. We had Alex Smith, obviously previously. He used to come up to the academy, and he was at the academy all hail, rain or shine. He was up there, and I think his role at the time at the club was to act as a bit of a technical advisor to the board. But no, we don't have somebody on the board that has that role, so to speak. So no, I can safely say that's not the case.
Do you know what? I'm actually surprised you've said that, Jamie, because I used to sit beside Keith Gourley in the South Stand, and he used to know better than anyone what was wrong with the players on the pitch, to be fair to him. So, yeah, and well, it's completely off topic from that vein, but Sean's got in touch. So he says, quick question for Jamie. We just wanted to know his and the club's thoughts on this Conference League with B teams, and what will be the club's stance on this?
Okay, good. That's very relevant as well, because we are going to vote on it at the start of June. So it took a bit of time, but we finally got the papers just last week. They arrived out so I also sit in the competitions working group. So this was something that was devised away from the competitions working group as part of a separate working group. So along the competitions working group, we didn't actually discuss it or didn't have any information of it until fairly recently. I'll start off from a personal point of view. It's not one that I believe, this is just personal, this is not Falkirk Football Club, that I believe is the right way forward. That's just a personal point of view. And I do have a lot of experience in youth development. So while I can see that we do have an issue to fix between the 17 and 21 age gap, I do believe that we need to find a way of getting our young players who compete very well internationally at 16, 17. But then we do have a difficulty getting them into first teams, and unfortunately by the time we play under 21 football, we are not competing as well as we were under 17s and 19s. So there is a drop off there, but I don't believe the Conference League will fix that. And I also have sympathy for the League Two teams who do drop out, because there is no safety net at all. Once you're out, you go into a non-funded league, and as we've seen, unfortunately, no club has been able to come back. So I do understand the two issues, but I don't think the Conference League is the one to solve it. With regards to the club, we've got a board meeting next week where we'll actually discuss it in detail. So we've not actually had a chance to properly discuss it. That's the honest answer. We'll look at the papers last week. Our next board meeting is Monday, and we also do want to hear from fans. So we've asked the FSS already, can they canvass supporters? Can they go and speak to supporters and give us your thoughts? Because we're a fan-owned club. We want to hear what the fans have got to say about this. If you have a view on it, please do share it. So even if you're not in the FSS and you want to share a view, we want to hear from all supporters, you can do that simply by board@falkirkfc.co.uk. Please share your views, because your views will matter to us. Once we've had the board meeting and we've looked at the fans' views, we'll form an opinion at that point in time, and obviously cast our vote in whatever way we believe is the right way to cast our vote.
Yeah, I've seen petitions set up and all sorts of things, and different people have different opinions. So we'll be interested to see how that goes. Jamie, just kind of finishing off. I guess last month me and Ross were on this podcast, and we're on the precipice of what could have been one of Falkirk's greatest seasons. We're potentially going to be in the Scottish Cup final, potentially going up into the Championship. We obviously, a month on, we're in a very different place to where we were. It was very raw 2 weeks ago when we were beating Bayardry 6-2 and obviously 7-2 on aggregate. Was there at any point any questions over the management? We do realise that John's there for the 2 years. Things were, the support after the game was completely split. If you looked everywhere, everyone had a different opinion. If you were drinking in the pubs, if you looked on social media, a lot of people saying John and the team to stay. A lot of people said, right, we need them out to have a success next season. In the boardroom level, was there questions over the manager, or are you all 100% focused on next season and confident going forward?
I think it's a really obvious question to ask. I mean, there's no doubt that I would say that night at Airdrie is probably the lowest I've ever felt in football. I was completely devastated for days after it, and I think some of the board and everybody in the club, it really was an incredibly difficult night, and one that unfortunately will live long in the memory for all the wrong reasons. You obviously then play the game on Saturday, and we don't do anywhere near enough on the Saturday either, even to try and maybe ask questions and maybe try and turn it around. So that was a really bad few days for the club, and I'll be honest, it's probably taken me until about now to really start to get over it. It really has hurt. What we decided to do was not make any, not have any discussions about it in the immediate aftermath. We don't think, football's a very emotional sport, and we were all feeling really, really down. So what we did do is we did ask for the management team to do an end of season review, to look at the whole season, what's went well, what hasn't went well, what are the lessons learned, why was the last quarter our weakest quarter, why did the playoffs go the way they did after making reasonable progress throughout the year? Why, when it came to it, did we perform so badly in the playoffs? So we asked the management team to cover all that off. We had a pretty in-depth discussion with them, where we asked a lot of questions of them as well. We had questions that we wanted answered, and we asked of the management team. I think that's the right way to do it. We had to review the 50-game season. We had to look at everything that had gone on, but ask questions about why did that happen in the end, and what are the plans now to make sure that, next year we win this league. This next year we went from 6th place to 2nd place. We've had overachieved in the cups. So the cups are a bonus, but we've overachieved in the cups. We have made progress. We got to 67 points, but we need next year to win a league. We're going to have to get to somewhere around about the 80-point mark. Would be a kind of a reasonable average target to get to. So these are the type of questions we've been asking, to say, how do we make sure that this time next year we are sitting at 77, 78, 79, 80 points, and if we do that, then we give ourselves a hell of a chance to win the league. So we didn't make any decisions or have any discussions immediately, John. We did have a proper end of season review, as we should do every season, regardless of how the season's ended, to make sure that next year we're in a very, very strong place to go and have a successful season.
Jamie, you know this question's coming, so obviously you've had this conversation with the management team. What is going to change so that we do win the league next season? Is there a something that the fans can grasp onto and go, right, it is going to be different than the last few years? So
first of all, we need to improve across the whole club. I mean, but we're probably a year and a half into what I said was a 1 to 3 year rebuild. So the whole club has to keep improving. I think we need to make that point, is that we have made progress this year, but every single aspect has to improve. And the football aspect has to improve. We have to see improvement on second place. We have to see improvement on 67 points. So we need to win more games, score more goals, concede less. Fairly straightforward in terms of putting it, talking through it. Obviously harder to achieve in terms of actually making it happen. We're in a stronger starting place. I think, Kev, do we concede that where we were last summer to where we are now, we've got a much stronger core of players. However, the next 3 to 4 signings that we make are going to be crucial. We have to improve on the players that moved on. So take the right back position as an example. It probably was a bit of a problem most of the season for different reasons. I think we had 4 different right backs over the course of the year. We must improve on that position. So whoever comes into that position must be better than we had last year. And if you do that in the 3 or 4 key positions that I think we would all feel need improved, then we'll be a better team. So if we're a better team, we give ourselves a real chance. But there's no doubt that we have to improve on, I think, certain things that John has said is we need to be more powerful, we need to be more aggressive, we need to have more speed about the team. These are the things that John has said, and I think we would all probably agree that while we have seen some good performances this year, unfortunately, when it came to the games against Dunfermline, when it came to the playoffs, we didn't perform at the level required. So we must make improvements, and that will come from recruitment. Absolutely, we have to get recruitment. We have to get recruitment right, but also John and Paul will learn from what's happened this year and take that into next year as well.
Well, I think that's a good place to leave it. Jamie, I just want to say thank you so much for your transparency. Thanks for coming on Falkirk Daft. I mean, certainly the difference has been noticed in terms of the communication with the supporters, the relationship with the supporters. So, we've got to thank you for that, because you've been behind that quite a bit. So really appreciate that and everything you've done. And fingers crossed we can get a few more signings in and build towards promotion next season. Yeah, hopefully, John. I do believe that we are. We have made compared to where we were this time last year. The club's in a much better place, but that's thanks to a lot of people that have contributed to that. But as I say, we're probably about a year and a half into. Probably another year, I believe, to get the club to the position we need it to be in. And that doesn't just mean the Championship.
with a new pitch and improve. It means across the whole club we need to improve again next year, in every single aspect. And that includes communication, it includes an engagement with supporters. Everything we do needs to improve again. I would like to take this opportunity just to say to the fans, genuine thank you for helping, recover the club from its worst ever season, to take us to the point where we did have up to the playoffs a lot of progress. I am sorry that we didn't achieve our aim of obviously getting into the championship, but it's certainly not through a want of effort or a lack of trying from everyone, and we will be making sure that everybody in this club is committed to making sure we win this league next year. So thanks again to the fans, because genuinely, without them and without their support this year, we don't achieve what we did achieve, and hopefully next year can be a really, really special one.
Brilliant. Jamie, Swinney, thank you so much for your time on Falkirk Daft.
This is Falkirk Daft.